Okay, in this first presentation we're going to talk about the overall design of home circuits, and you're going to want to go into your packet and have a look at this figure that's there. I'm just going to do a very brief treatment of this. The idea is that inside of your house, let's think about a room like a kitchen, okay? And what we want to do first of all is think about how things are connected in your kitchen electrically. So in your kitchen you probably have a lot of different outlets. Maybe you've got an outlet where there's a microwave attached, and then one with a toaster, maybe one with a coffee pot, a light, etc. And these are all different things that are running in the kitchen circuit. Well, one of the things that we want is we want to have these things running independently of each other. And so by now you should know that a parallel circuit is a perfect way to do that. So with the parallel circuit, if you were to put all of your outlets in parallel, that allows you to turn off the light and not affect a coffee pot and not affect a toaster, because they're completely separate. And every one of these things is its own unique path. So most of the things in that room, in any room in your house, are going to be wired together in parallel. Now, one thing, though, is not wired in parallel, and that's going to be the circuit breaker. Okay? And the circuit breaker is actually something which you probably have to go into your basement to find. The circuit breaker is basically designed to open up the entire circuit, that is, to shut everything off if the current gets too high. So in a lot of circuits, that current might be about 20 amps. And so a circuit breaker has a way of determining whether or not the current is too high. And if it is, it automatically opens up the whole circuit. So what good is this? Well, the purposes of a circuit breaker is it limits the current so the wires in your house do not overheat and start a fire. Okay, I'll repeat. The reason you have a circuit breaker is so that the wires do not overheat and you don't have a fire. Think of how dangerous that would be for a fire to start behind the walls of your house. You wouldn't know about it until it was too late. What a circuit breaker will not protect you from is it will not protect you from an electrical shock, because a circuit breaker only limits the current when it gets up to some value like 20 amps. And I think you've learned in class that in order to kill somebody, you need a much lower amount of current. So really, a circuit breaker, the purpose is to stop the current before the wires get too hot. Okay. Now, if you look at the rest of your house, it turns out that the rest of your house is kind of laid out in a similar sort of a way. So we just talked about the kitchen. Now, the kitchen might just be one circuit, but you've got other rooms in your house. You've got bedrooms, you've got living and dining rooms, you've got the basement, etc. And every one of these rooms might have its own circuit. So that, let's say that you are using too much current in your kitchen and the kitchen circuit shuts off, you do not want the rest of your house to shut down also. So the way the circuits should be arranged in your house is that the individual circuits are actually in parallel with each other. And that way you can kind of keep them independent of each other. Again, you don't want your whole house to shut down simply because you're using too many things in one room. And so for that reason, you place these different circuits in parallel with each other. Okay, so that's kind of the idea with this picture down here. Now, you do have a master or a main breaker. And usually this is rated for some crazy high number of amps. In most homes these days, they're rated for about 200 amps. And I guess one way that this would shut off would be if you were using just enough power in every single room in your house where it wasn't enough to shut off the room itself, but collectively or all together you were to go above 200 amps, then this would shut off, this main breaker. Having said that, that's really not what it's used for mostly. Most of the time, this is used by an electrician when they come to do major electrical work in your house. They'll just shut this off, and then they can be assured that everything in the house is basically off and safe. So that's kind of the purpose of the main breaker or the fuse. Okay? So to kind of recap, most of the things in your house, most of the outlets and lights and things are wired in parallel. The individual circuits in your house are wired in parallel. What's not wired in parallel are the circuit breakers. And that's on purpose, because when a circuit breaker opens, you want the entire circuit to open and protect your home from fire. And the other idea is that the circuit breaker is protecting you from fire and not from electrocution.